Hello everyone, in this video we're going to continue our journey in data cleaning. After the previous video that we saw an example of sort of like restructure the data, change it in a way that the data becomes more accessible to us for our analysis. Now we want to sort of dig deeper and now try to make sure that the data is clean at the level of values. One of the factors that we will have to make sure about our data is that our records are actually correct. They're not erroneous, they don't have mistakes and things like that. So in this video, we're going to see an example of how an error can be detected and how we can go about fixing. So before starting, we're going to import a couple of modules. A couple of modules here are sounds new to you, but once we get there, we'll talk about how they're gonna help us in this video. So data cleaning level 2, and this example here we have the number of customers that visited a Starbucks store from October to November 24th for every hour. So it's like a 2-month period, and the store opens from 8 a.m. and closes at 5 p.m. every day of the week. And we want to see if there are any errors in the data. This is the task we wanna handle here. So we go ahead and read the data, and the data has every day of the week and the time and how many customers entered the store in that 1 hour time frame. So it's from 8 to 9, and then this is from 9 to 10, from 10 to 11, and so on and so forth. So this is the data. Why not we use some of the functionalities of Python and Pandas to sort of like get to know our data. So we use the function describe, and we see that the number of customers, the average is 7.2 every hour's visit, and then standard deviation is 3. It's not very small, and it can range from 0 to 40 customers per hour visit. So another thing we could do is we could use a box plot. Box plot is a great way to see if there are any outliers in the data. So the reason that we have those modules is that because if you want to do the pandas and do any plots for you, pandas uses these modules embedded in the modules to be able to come up with these plots. For any function of plotting of pandas, you need to have called matplotlib as well. So matplotlib is another module that really helps with a lot of visualizations. So once we run this, now we take a look at this. We can take a look at the summary of our data. So we have here the number of customers, and we see that the majority or almost all of the data can be confined between 0 and 15, and there is one that is 40. So that may raise concern that this might be a mistake put in the data. So we could also plot it in plot the data as a line, and we can see these changes are happening based on different hours, but there is this big spike that it sounds out of the norm. So that's also can tell us that something's happening here that might be an error. So we take a look at that customer. So we say the customers that the number of customers, the record of the number of customers is 40. We want to see it, and we figure out this specific day at 4 p.m. So we do an investigation, and after investigation, we realize there was nothing out of ordinary that happened in that day. So this entry, we conclude that this entry must be an error. So we go ahead and change that entry to an NaN, which means there is no value there. When there is an error, the error could be from typing by mistake or just any other reasons. When there is an error, we can the best thing we can do is that we don't have a value that we can rely on for that specific day and hour. So once we do this, now we have taken care of that one data that was recorded with mistake. So if we run this again, now our data looks better. So this is at the level of the whole data. Now we sort of like look at the data and everything seems to be working well, and we don't see error or possible error here. But if we look closer, by that I mean come up with a box plot for every hour. So for example, a box plot for 8 to 9 a.m. and then a box plot for 9 to 10 a.m. That might also reveal some possible errors. So we go ahead and come up with those box plots. So we need to sort of like separate our times. So these are our possible times, and then we create loops, and that loops goes over all of the date possibilities. So this is all of the date possibilities, and for every date we want to look at what happened in that day. So once we run this, now we have the 1st of October in 2020, and in the beginning there were 4 customers enter, and there was an increase in the number of customers, and then after during the afternoon it started decreasing, and we will see very similar pattern in most days for the customers visiting this Starbucks. We see similar patterns. So there are so many of these. I'll scroll pretty quickly. And you can see there is like an empty spot here, and it's because the one that we changed to null. See, most of them looks pretty good until we get to this one. That every time around the closing time, we see a very sharp decline. But here we actually see sharp increase in the number of customers visiting the Starbucks. So there might be something going on here, but let's keep that in mind. Let's do another visualization. This time, do that box plot I was describing earlier. So to do this box plot, now we have to have the time possibilities. For each time possibility, we do a loop, and we capture the number of customers for that specific time possibility. And then we keep all of these in a series. And then we use the matplotlib box plot to visualize this. So once we run this, now we see that every hour sort of like has this range of possibility of values that are within the what happens normally, and so statistically it makes sense for these amount of changes. But for the hour before closing, we see there are 2 outliers. Well, I mean, the 0 ones, I mean, we can imagine having a 0 for the closing hours for a store, but the 15 is very out of ordinary for that closing amount of time. So let's go ahead and investigate. So we figure out what this is. So the date DF time should be 17, and the number of customers is somewhat larger than 12. So we figure out what that date is. So on this date there were 15 customers, which was out of ordinary for this time frame. Recorded in the data. So we do some investigation, and we realize that at 4:25, biking club made an hour stop for refreshment. A club consisting of 20 people came in, and because of that, there were this jump in the data that the number of customers visiting the store. So we realized this is not an error. There was a red flag, but we found the reason for this jump or this value being so different. So you have to remember, not every time you have an outlier, there is something that you have to worry about, or there is something that you have to eliminate from your data. Now we know what this is. We do know there is like a number that is different from the rest of the data, but we are not going to be deleting this or changing this to a missing value or null value. So once we have that, now we save our data to update the customer entries. And now this is a data that we suspect that has no further errors.